Good day, everyone. Today we're gonna talk about economic history and cultural history. But first, we will going to talk about economic history. So before we start our lesson, let's go to our lesson objectives. So by the end of this lesson, the students will be able to describe the country's economic history through issues of agrarian reform, taxation, and trade policies. Identify how economic problems of the present are rooted in past decisions and events. Evaluate the trajectory of the Philippine economy through an understanding of its development throughout history. And interpret visualizations of historical economic data using historical sources. So, economic history deals with the study of past economic events by applying economic theory to historical situation and institutions. So, studying economic history, nag-allow kini nga sabtan nato ang economic decisions na ginapahimo karon. Di lang decisions nga naga-affect sa atong kinabuhi, but also the lives of the rest of Filipino. So, ang atong topic day karon kinaka-cover kinig three crucial economic issues. First, we will discuss the policies on agrarian reform. Next, we will tackle Philippine taxation. Then, finally, we will look at the trade policies throughout history does not grasp the development of the Philippine economy.
Agrarian reform is essentially the rectification of the whole system of agriculture. Through genuine and comprehensive agrarian reform, the Philippines will be able to gain more from the agriculture potential and uplift the Filipino in the agricultural sector. Later on, through the law of the Indias, the Spanish crown awarded tracts of the land to religions order. Spanish military as repartamentos or reward for their service, and the Spanish encomenderos. The encomenderos system was unfair and abusive as compressed by the Vandalas, became the norm of the Filipino farmers working the land. In the 1860s, Spain enacted a law ordering landholders to register their land. The Philippine Organic Law of 1902 provided regulations on the ownership of public lands. Private individuals may own 16 hectares, while corporate landholders may have 1,024 hectares. The Philippine Commission also enacted Act Number 496 or the Land Registration Act. President Quezon laid down a social justice program focused on the purchase of haciendas, which were to be divided and sold to tenants. His administration also created the National Rice and Corn Corporation. The Homestead program also continued through the National Land Settlement Administration or NLSA. The administration of President Rojas passed Republic Act Number 34 to establish a 70-30 sharing agreement between tenants and landlord repeatedly. Under the term of President Elpidio Quirino, the Land Settlement Development Corporation was established to accelerate and expand the resettlement program for peasants. This agency became a National Resettlement and Rehabilitation Administration or NARA. Under the administration of President Ramon Magsaysay, Republic Act Number 1199 or the Agricultural Tenancy Act was passed to govern the relationship between landholders and tenants, protecting the tenurial rights of tenants, and enforce tenancy practice. The Court of Agricultural Relationship was created in 1955 to improve tenancy security. A significant stride in the land reform was taken during the term of President Diosdado Macapagal through the Republic Act Number 3844 or the Agricultural Land Reform Code. President Marcos declared martial law in 1972 and enabling him to wipe out the landlord-dominated Congress. Presidential Decree Number 27 or the Code of Agrarian Reform during the Marcoses regime. On July 22, 1987, Aquino issued Presidential Proclamation Number 131 and Executive Order Number 229, which outlined her land reform program. In 1988, Congress passed Republic Act Number 6657 or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Law or CARL, which introduced the program with the same name, Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program or CARP. CARP's accomplishments during the Aquino administration were dismal. It achieves only 22.5% of the land distribution in 6 years. By 1996, the Department of Agrarian Reform, or DAR, distributed only 58.25% of the total target area covered by the program. Ramon signed Republic Act Number 8532 in 1998 to amend CARL and extend the program to another 10 years. The new deadline of CARP expired in 2008, leaving 1.2 million farmers beneficiaries and 1.6 million hectares of agricultural land to be distributed to the farmers. In 2009, President Arroyo signed the Republic Act Number 9700 or the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program Extension with Reforms or CARPIR. Section 30 of the law also mandated that any case and proceeding involving implementation of the provision of CARPS, which may remain pending on June 30, 2014, shall be allowed to proceed to its finality and executed even beyond such a date. From 2009 to 2014, Carpier has distributed total of 1 million hectares of the land to 900,000 farmers beneficiaries. After 27 years of land reform and to Aquino administration, 500,000 hectares remain undistributed. The DAR and the Department of Environment and Natural Resources or DENR were mandated to fulfill a CARP and CARPIR.
Evolution of Philippine taxation. Taxation developed and evolved through times as a government mechanism. But our ancestors were mainly involved in a subsistence economy, while the payment of tribute or taxes, buwis or handog, or the obligation to provide labor services that datos in some early Filipino communities in the Philippines may resemble taxation. So, ang taxation daw ito ang sumusuporta sa ating bansa para mapaunlad ito. At dahil sa hirap ng pamumuhay noon, ang buwis ng ating bansa or ang ibibigay ng mga Pilipino ay pare-parehas lang. The arrival of the first Spaniard altered this subsistence system because they imposed the payment of tributos or tributes from the Filipinos, similar to what has been practiced in all their colonies in the Americas. In 1884, the payment of tribute was halted and replaced by the full tax collected through a certificate of identification called the Cedula Personal. So, sa pagdating ng mga Espanyol na bago ang sistema ng ating pamumuhay, tinanggal na ang tributes at ginawang Cedula Personal or the Certificate of Identification. Two direct taxes were added in 1878. Urbana was a tax on the annual rental value of an urban real estate, and the industrial was a tax on salaries, dividends, and profits. Still, the biggest state of monopolized was tobacco, which began in 1781 and halted in 1882. In 1878 daw, nadagdagan ng dalawang taxes, at ito ang urbana tax at industrial tax. Pinakamalaking produkto na pinagkukunan ng buwis ay ang tobacco in 1881 at natapos noong 1882. Later on, Pulos E. Servicius Lipin and was recognized at the municipal level. Males were required to provide labor for 40 days a year, reduced to 15 days a year in 1884. From 1898 to 1903, the Americans followed the Spanish system of taxation with some modification of taxation. So si Pulos E. Servicius daw, mas pagaan niya ang serbisyo o pagtrabaho sa mga lalaki na dati ay 40 days a year, ginawa niyang 15 days in a year noong 1884. And noong 1889 ay 98 to 1903, the Americans will follow padayon ang sunod ang American sa sistema sa mga Spanish taxation. The Interval Revenue Law of 1904 was passed as a reaction to the problems of collecting land tax. In 1907, some provinces were authorized to double the fee for the cedula to support the construction and maintenance of road. In 1913, the Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act was passed, resulting in a reduction of the revenue of the government as export taxes leveled in sugar, tobacco, hemp, and copra were left. In 1904 daw, ang Internal Revenue Law ay napasa para sa mga problema sa land tax collecting. I-authorize ang ubang provinces para idoble nila ang pagkolekta sa mga bayad sa sedula para mapadayon ang paghimo ng mga kalsada. In 1913, naipasa din ang batas na Underwood-Simmons Tariff Act para ma-reduce ang pag-collect ug tax para sa pag-export sa mga produkto nga sugar, tobacco, and copra. Income tax rate were increased in 1936, adding a surtax rate of individual net incomes above 10,000 pesos in 1937. The cedula tax was abolished, which appeared to be a progressive move. A residence tax was imposed on every citizen aged 18 years old above and every corporation. In 1939, the Commonwealth government drafted the National Internal Revenue Code. So, ang income tax rate daw ay tumaas noong 1936 at naragdagan ng surtax rate about 10,000 pesos above. So, in 1937, tinanggal ang cedula tax at binigyan ng residence tax para sa mga citizen na nag-iedad ng 18 years old above at pinalabas ng pamahalaan ang National Revenue Code. The impact of the war on the Philippines economy was effectively disparate as the capital Manila was razes the ground while the rest of the Philippines was relatively untouched. Tax Avenue in 1953 increased twofold compared to 1948, the year when Quirino first assumed the presidency. So, dahil sa mga conflict sa Pilipinas ay naging capital of the Philippines ang Manila. At naitala din na mas tumaas ang Tax Avenue compared sa unang pag-upo ni Quirino bilang presidente. From 1959 to 1968, Congress did not pass any tax legislation despite essential changes in the economy, and the Omnibus Tax Law of 1969 did not increase the ratio of income tax to the general revenue. Dahil nga sa hindi pagtaas ng income tax to the general tax revenue ay hindi binigyan ng tax legislation ito. Under the Marcos authoritarian regime, the tax system remained aggressive. During the later part of the Marcos year, in 1981 to 1985, the tax system was still heavily dependent on indirect taxes that composed 70% of total tax collection. So, sa pamumuno ni Pangulong Marcos, ang sistema ng ating taxes ay naging aggressive pa din. Kasabay ng later party ng Marcos year in 1981 to 1985 at umabot pa din sa 70% ang total tax na nakukolekt. As Corazon took the helm of the government after the EDSA Revolution, she reformed the tax system through the 1986 Tax Reform Program. Along with the tax reform came the administrative changes such as the restructuring of the Department of Finance and its attached agency, the Bureau of Internal Revenue or BIR, through Executive Order number 127. So under sa pamumuno ni Corazon, ibalik niya ang sistema ng tax by 1986 Reform Program at pinagawa niya ang Department of Finance at ang Bureau of Internal Revenue or BIR sa pamamagitan ng Executive Order number 127. In 2016, the administration of new President Rodrigo Duterte promised tax reform in May 2020. Inflation stood at 2.1%. The Duterte administration's economic team projected the country's growth potential in 2021 will accelerate once the impact of government money support measures gain concession. So, under sa pamumuno ni Rodrigo Duterte, ang tax kay ning increase raw 2.1% noong May May 2020 up to 2021 dahil sa mga suporta ng pera sa pamahalaan.
Trade policies and the Philippine economy. We begin by looking at maritime Silk Road that stretched from the Mediterranean Sea to southern China and traversed the Red Sea, the Indian Ocean, and South China Sea to Southeast Asia. From 12th to 15th centuries, regional trade centers rose in Cambodia, Angkor, Burma, Pagan, Sumatra, Mapahit, Vietnam, Champa, and Malaysia, Malacca. In 1909, the Payne-Aldrich Tariff Act allowed free entry of Philippine goods in United States, subject to tariff, while U.S. imported were exempted from tariffs in the Philippines. Subsequent tariff act the United States in the years 1913, 1922, and 1930 only slightly modified the reciprocal free trade relations. World War II started the trade from 1941 until 1945. In 1946, the Philippines was declared independent by mid-1960s. The Philippines faced several economic issues. In 1962, the government devalued the peso and abolished import controls and exchange licensing. Ferdinand Marcos won the presidency under the slogan, "This nation can be great again." In the 1970s, the Philippines grew at higher average annual rate of 6.4%, mainly because Marcos borrowed foreign currency. In 1965 to 1986, it was estimated that Marcos' family stole a total of $5 to $10 billion. Under Ramos, the country committed Philippine tariff and trade commitments in international law through participation in international trade agreements such as World Trade Organization, (NAFTA), and Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation. The economy grew at fastest pace in decades, with growth rate exceeding 7% in 2007. At the same time, Philippine offshore gaming operators increased, which employed and catered mainly into Chinese. Amid worldwide pandemic caused by COVID-19, the future of Philippines, especially its trade and economy, remains very uncertain.
Cultural history. So, by the end of this lesson, the students will be able to define cultural history and identify cultural issues in the Philippine history. Examine how Philippine epic poetry and festivals are repositories of Filipino culture. Appraise the protection and conservation of our intangible cultural heritage, and formulate a social media campaign to promote an intangible cultural heritage element. So, Philippine cultural history looks at cultural traditions and interpretations of historical experience through the distinctive ways of Filipino various ethnologistic backgrounds live. So, in this lesson, we focus on intangible cultural heritage or ICH. Many of these ICH elements are under threat from weakening practice and transmission, cultural globalization, decontextualization, and negative attitudes, among others.
Philippine epic poetry. Our country has a grand oral tradition represented in myths, old saying, communal song for farming or harvesting, folklore, superstitions, and so on. An intangible sources that stand out is epic poetry. Epic used to be recited by a special member of the society called Binukot for hours and hours during the special occasion. Traversing with the protagonist of the story is his adventure. It was an epic recited like a series of poems, hence epic poetry. Fortunately, Anthropologists such as Felipe Landa Hucano were able to record some of the Philippine epics and encoded them into print material. They have become windows to an era of our history that had no written source. Some of the most known Philippine epics are the Ilocano Biag na Lamang, the Ifugao Hudhud, the Merina Darangen, and the longest Philippine epic, Panay Hinalawod. In 1963, historian anthropologist E. Arsenio Manuel surveyed Philippine folk epics and categorized them to belong to Christian people, pagan groups, and Muslim Filipinos. Although there is no direct translation of epics to local languages, local cognition approximate its meaning. Meranao, Darangen roughly means an epic song, which is the same of the Ulihang in Bukidnon, Pulangge, Kulaman, Bagubo, and Matagsilog. Hudud and its cognate Sudsud means song. Manuel notes that epics have the following characteristics: narratives of sustained length based on oral tradition, revolving around supernatural events or heroic deeds, in the form of verse which is either chanted or sung, with a certain seriousness of purpose and embodies or validates the beliefs, customs, ideals, or life values of the people. So, Philippine epic is considered to be the highest point of development for Philippine folk literature. Encompassing narratives that recount the adventure of tribal heroes, these epics are transmitted through oral tradition using select group of singers and chanters. The Spaniard must know some of these epics. Spanish military officer Miguel de Luarca in 1582 referred to a folk epic in Panay Island as a new way to preserve their ancient lore, which they sing in a very pleasing manner, commonly while plying their oars. He noted that during revelries, singers recite the exploits of olden times. So, Spanish military officer Miguel de Luarca, ang conquistador, gives a graphic description of the supernatural beliefs and religion, saw printing in 1589. Among the epics, only Biag ni Lamang and Bicol Handiog were recorded during the Spanish era. In 1914, anthropology professor H. Otley Bayer began collecting epics, nothing that true epic poetry is today found chiefly among the pagan groups and the Moros. But fragments of pre-Spanish epics have been recovered among the Christian, Ilocos, Bicos, and Leyte Visayan. One thing to analyze in epics is the elements that would seem to have been a foreign influence or addition. This may be seen in the names of characters such as Lamang's fathers, Don Juan, or practice such as Lamang marriage as an sacrament. This may have been carved into epics in the manner of translation or transmission by the Spanish. The Philippine Folklore Society, founded in 1958, strengthened the faithful collection of eventual translation and publication of these epics. The Ifugao Hudhud was recorded from the recitation of several singers from different locations, resulting in different version and translation from early 90s to 1950s. The epics follows the adventure of several characters from different perspectives. Aligoyon and at Hananga, Hudhud of Aligoyon, was bored by the rustle of the palm tree at Alidugen, and Hudhud of Bugan, but the most known is Hudhud ni Aligoyon. It tells a story of Aligoyon born in a village called Hananga. He was a notable young man who learned combat skills and chanting magic spells from his father. The village leader Amatalaw Aligoyon went to a battle. His father enemy Pangaiwan's sons Pumbakayon faced Aligoyon. They fought 3 years non-stop and in the process developed an admiration of each other's skills. They ended their fight and drew a peace treaty between their village, which their respective people celebrate. Aligoyon ended up marrying Pumbakayon's sister Bugan, while Pumbakan married Aligoyon's sister Aginia. Themes of social responsibility, love, harmony with nature, patriotism, self-sufficiency, and spiritual, among others, were evident in the epics that in 2001 it was named the masterpiece of oral intangible heritage of humanity by UNESCO. From Sulud Central Panay, the allegedly longest Philippine epic that it continuously sung would take 30 hours, Sinalawud, it composed of two major epics of Labaw Dunggon and Humadapnon. Hukano recorded the epic Labaw Dunggon with 3,822 lines and the longer Humadapnon with 53,000 lines. Hinalawod tells the story of three demigod brothers, Labaw Dunggon, Humadapnon, and Dumalapdap. The long story features heroic feats, sacred rituals, and several themes that show that ancient Filipino valued an aspect of early Philippine society that we have difficulty accessing due to advent of colonialism. In Mindanao, the missionary Frank Laubach was the first to introduce Miranao folk literature to the world in 1930s, especially their darangen or epic song. Unfortunately, it was not picked up and none showed much interest in his work. Laubach noted that these epic songs have great historical importance, as they are the only important survivor of the ancient Philippine civilization, a collection of 17 cycles and the Sanskrit elements. The Rangan is likewise a series of lengthy songs in sequence. The folklore characteristics of these epics reflect a very old part of our history. The nuisance between the version also reflect the province such as the Manuel observed with the Hinalawod version of the highlands of the lowlands reflecting their respect cultures. It emerged that the highland was more detailed and less influenced by foreign elements, always present in the epic varying degrees and supernaturalism or heroism of the characters. Hudhud characters were closest to human capacity, while epics from Visayas and Mindanao portrayed their characters as needing some sort of magical power they would use in battle. Philippine festivals and celebration. Filipino are familiar with fiestas or festival, from the barangay to the provincial level. Each has assigned date in a year to get together and celebrate as one big community. The street adorned with colorful buntings and people cooking the best specialties in the big pots while everyone waited for the colorful parade to pass. These are the socio-cultural high points of the year. Visitors would come and join in this celebration, which is usually held but not limited to honor a particular patron saint of a Christian faith. Some of the most known festivals are the Feast of the Black Nazarene. The Black Nazarene is a life-size image of a dark-skinned kneeling Jesus Christ carrying the cross enshrined in the minor basilica of Black Nazarene in the Quiapo district of City of Manila. Feast of Santo Niño. The third Sunday of January is the Feast of Santo Niño, which is typically marked by various celebrations, parades, dances, and events all over the country. Sinulog. The Sinulog Santo Niño Festival is an annual cultural and religious festival held on the third Sunday of January in Cebu City and on the fourth Sunday of January in Carmen, Cebu. And this center is a Santo Niño Catholic celebration in the Philippines. Ati-Atihan. The Ati-Atihan Festival is a Philippine festival held annually in January in honor of the Santo Niño in several towns of the province of Aklan, Panay Island, and the biggest celebration is held during the third Sunday of January in the town of Calibo, the province capital. Dinagyang. The Dinagyang Festival is a religious and cultural festival in Iloilo City, Philippines, held annually the fourth Sunday of January or right after the Sinulog in Cebu, and the Ati-Atihan Festival in Calibo, Aklan. Panagbenga. Panagbenga Festival is a month-long annual flower occasion in Baguio. The term is Canadian origin, meaning season of blooming. The festival is held in January, was created as a tribute of the city flowers and as a way to rise from devastation of 1990 Luzon earthquake. Mascara. The Mascara Festival is an annual festival with highlights held every fourth Sunday of October in Bacolod, Philippines. The most recent festival was held on the last 30th October 30 and 2021. The festival sites include the Bacolod Public Plaza and the Lacson Tourism Strip in Bacolod City Government Center. Kadayawan. The Kadayawan Festival is an annual festival in the city of Davao in the Philippines. The festival is a celebration of life, a thanksgiving for a gift of nature and wealth culture, the bounties of harvest, and sincerity of living. Pahiyas. One of the most famous festival in the Philippines happens every 50th of May in the province of Quezon. The townspeople express their gratitude to their patron saint for a bountiful harvest through an event named Pahiyas Festival. Mariones. The Mariones is a Lenten festival held annually on Holy Week on the island of Marinduque, Philippines. The Mariones are men and women costumes and masks replicating the garb of biblical Imperial Roman soldier as interpreted by locals. Zamboanga Hermosa. The Hermosa Festival, also known as Zamboanga La Hermosa Festival, popularly known as Fiesta Pilar, is a month-long fiesta held each year in the city of Zamboanga. The Santo Niño di Cebu devotion is a symbol of beginning. The Santo Niño di Cebu devotion is a symbol of the beginning of Christianity in the Philippines. Magellan gifted the holy image to Queen Juana and baptized natives in Cebu in 1521. It was a significant unique union of the foreign image to the native beliefs of Anito and Antinganti, an acceleration of the Holy Infant into a system of indigenous folk beliefs and practices. The Spaniards thought of Christianity as the catalyst in gathering the Filipinos to a common faith, attitudes, and behavior, all to advance Spanish administrative hold in a all-established religiousness. The Spanish friars saw that they had to use the festivals to attract rural natives to the new faith established in urban centers. Hence, they made the festival more colorful and inviting. But eventually, in the 17th century, even Moros became curious about the festivals that happened in Zamboanga, that they too visited the church. There were even fireworks and bullfights. In 1641, Easter in Zamboanga celebrated the passion and death of Christ through masses, the erection of the Holy Sepulchre, and procession. The attendees, including Moros, were so impressed that they asked about the meaning of what they had just seen. The Spanish priests were elated. Reinhard Wen, 1998, is a study of fiestas and colonial culture. The Moros of Mindanao had a different experience as they syncretized pre-Islamic beliefs and ways with official Islam in the 13th or 14th century, and even Christianity around the 17th century. Bill Mass is observing folk Islam in Africa in 1989. The Moros of Mindanao experienced syncretism in three ways: indigenous, Islamic, and Christian. An exciting place to find a manifesting of this is the fourth pillar in Zamboanga City, where the Hermosa Festival is celebrated every October. Studying festivals and celebrations, especially of the IPs, reflects a portion of their history as well. Similar to oral tradition and epics, festivals are also considered elements of the country intangible cultural heritage, or ICH, that need to be recorded. Festivals will become a double-edged sword used by the Spaniard to further their hold on the Filipinos, and it was on the very same festival that the Katipuneros called toward freedom from the Spaniards. Through the centuries, festivals have picked up indigenous and foreign elements to make up a distinct Philippine festivals culture, continuing to shape and be shaped by values and attitudes.
Conservation of intangible cultural heritage. Intangible cultural heritage, or ICH, is more challenging to preserve and protect compared to the TCH. Daghang ICH practices nga nagkahinay nagkawala due to economic pressure, loss of objects of systems, and negative attitudes. So the NCCA ratified the 2003 UNESCO Convention for the Safeguarding of the Intangible Cultural Heritage, which nagsik na to ensure the protection and conservation of intangible expressions of our customs and traditions. So kini nga lesson, another ICH element inscribed in the UNESCO list is the ponok. So, ang pono kay kuan na siya, taging ritual participated in the communities in Hongduan, Ifugao. So, the group na madaog di ani nga dula according to the traditional beliefs kay they will have a plentiful year and the rice granary will be full. So while the loser will have a lean year. Linear, which means is years of need lack ba? Lack sila year. So, maora ni ang topic na to karong adlaw. So, thank you sa pagpaminaw o God bless sa inyong tanan.